Go ahead, Gray.
Thank you, Commissioner Schuster. I was asked to basically give an update. I spoke in Chattanooga 3 months ago, giving an update of sort of the first leg of what we've done with their wild hog program. And this is a follow-up after sort of our first winter to give an idea of what's going on with their wild hog program. So the thing I really want to focus on is sort of the big picture effort of what's going on with this idea that it's a redirection of agency resources similar to our turkey and deer restoration, and also focus back on the fact that this is a trapping effort, that we as an agency are primarily going after these in the trapping, with trapping as far as what our activities are, and doing as good a job as we can with that, and then it's as taking them over bait, etc., as necessary. The other part of this is prioritizing, actually laying out a plan, and this is where we prioritized on 3 different levels. All counties were given these priority levels. So a reminder, most of this yellow are these priority 1 counties, which are low levels of hogs, and so with small pockets of hogs scattered across the landscape, areas that we believe we can very quickly, in terms of a big scale program, very quickly get after and do a good job eliminating these populations. Level 2 and level 3, higher numbers of hogs, going to be a little bit longer term, difficult process for us, but we're ready to take off on it. What I'm talking about today primarily is our plan, our implementation of our plan, and so that basically began in earnest as our deer season's wrapped up in into December and early January. And we've also recently suspended much of our activity as we've entered the turkey season. So we kind of see how these things get chopped up. But you'll see very quickly what the field personnel have done is unbelievable amount of work going on out there. So much of what we're talking about today is going to be this 8 to 10 weeks in mid-January when we actually got traps on the ground to about mid to late March when we actually had to pull our traps to get ready for turkey season. And again, going after trapping. Going region by region, I've got a lot of numbers, so if the commission would like additional information, I'd be happy to share the presentation because there's a lot of technical information here, just specific numbers. Region 1, which if you remember was not many hogs in Region 1. They did have 9 trap sites, 5 on public, 4 on private. They made 8 landowner visits, and there was 5 counties involved, 2 WMAs, 16 personnel were involved, and they worked 694 hours on this hog. And this, when we're talking about hours, we're going to have the next slide is hogs removed, but you have to remember that this is administrative time. This is everything, not just the on the ground trapping time. So we worked, this is what Region 1 did in this 8 to 10 week period, the start of the first quarter of this year. Region 2, a few more hogs, very much focused, that should be reversed. And so that they did most of their work on private land instead of public land. And so they did 52 landowner visits across 8 counties. They worked on 1 WMA. They had 46 personnel involved, and they worked a total of 3,850 hours on this effort, and they took out 145 hogs in this 8-week period. Region 3, heavily working on our WMAs, 34 trap sites on the WMA, 1 trap site on the public, 8 landowner visits, working in a 4-county area with 4 WMAs as well. They had 58 personnel involved during this time period, and they worked a total of 5,610 hours on their hog eradication, and they took out 230 hogs out of Region 3 during that 8 to 10 week period. Region 4, heavily skewed towards back towards private, 9 on public, 14 on private. This is an underestimate of their landowner visits. They tried to visit every one of their exemption holders, and so they had over 100 exemption holders. And so I was talking with Dan, so they probably had almost 10 times as many landowner visits as reported here. 7 counties involved, that would also go up with the landowner visits. 3 of their WMAs, 51 personnel, 3,100 hours, and they took out 84 hogs during this time period. So when you run that all together, we're looking at 49 of our just over half, a little over half, maybe 60% of our trap sites are on public land. 40% of our effort right now is going to the general public, trying to help landowners get rid of hogs on their property. We made a total of 82 visits. This is an underestimate at this point. Landowner visits specifically to give technical assistance for hog management across the state. We had 24 counties involved, 10 of our WMAs, And all total, we had 175 personnel involved in this process, racking up 13,800 hours on this effort. And we took out 472 hogs during this entire process. So the other part of this, and so that sort of goes through the short term, what did we do trapping? You know, that was a large scale, what we did on our trapping efforts, but a lot else went on. So the bigger picture of what we've done, not only during this brief period of time that we had the opportunity to trap, but also let's go back and look at our methods exemption, which I gave you guys a brief update in January on what we did with the methods exemption. And so this goes back all the way to July of 2011 and runs to December of 2011. 760 exemptions were issued. We received back 625 activity reports. So 83% of the people that gave us information on their activities during the year. They told us we had 4.9 designees per exemption, so they were about half full on their exemptions. And that number went up. The numbers I reported in July are in January. When the landowners gave us their postcards back, they underreported by half. They told us that they had about 2 people per exemption. And so when we actually got it back and saw who was on there, we had almost 5 people per exemption. So those numbers are quite different in the 2 surveys that were conducted. And again, we found that these respondents are very happy in the process of getting the methods exemptions. 98% of them found it easy to get it and were fine with what happened. So they were very pleased with the process of getting the exemption. What did they do? They reported back 2,686 hogs, 905 shot at night, 482 over bait, 105 with no ammo restriction, 596 is other methods, and this is the one we have to tease out because this includes the 4-county dog hunt area, and so we got to figure out exactly how to tease all that out, and then we took 598 over trapping. So extrapolating that up for 83% response rate, we're looking at somewhere around 3,200 hogs were taken by our 700 and some odd landowners under this program. So pretty good dent in the hog population in not even completing our first year at this point. What's going on with our exemptions this year? 47 have been issued so far. All of our exemptions expired on December 31st. We reissued them on January 1, so we're starting that second year of our exemptions. 4761, 611, obviously showing what's going on in Region 3. 112 in Region 4 gives us a statewide total of 831, 9% increase from 2011. So it'll be interesting to see how this process goes through, if we sort of saturated the people that are desiring these, which is kind of what I'm seeing right now with only a 10% increase, or will we see sort of a push as we come around to the next hunting season for people wanting to get the opportunity to kill hogs on their properties. The other good part is if you go back and think about the fact that we visited 80% or over 80 landowners, and a lot of these landowners would have been on our exemption holders. We touched base with about 10% of our exemption holders. Region 4 touched base with almost 100% of their exemption holders. So we as an agency are reaching out, trying to get in touch with these folks and trying to help them as much as we possibly can with this hog eradication or hog control effort. What we've done, and this includes all of 2011 and 2012, with our disease monitoring. So we're collecting blood as we possibly, every hog we kill, we collect blood. Getting some blood from private landowners, depends on, it's situational on that. We have tested in the last year 680 hogs for disease. And so 625 were for brucellosis, 628 were for pseudorabies. If you remember, we can get brucellosis, we can't get pseudorabies. Both of these are very impactful for the agricultural community though. 10 of the 625 for brucellosis came back positive, so about 2% infection rate. And Cumberland, Bledsoe, and Giles County are where those came from. 38 of our 628 were positive for pseudorabies, and so that came back with a 6%. And again, Bledsoe, Giles, Overton, and Putnam County. So these are not insignificant rates, and especially if you're a farmer, any kind of disease prevalence in the population is problematic. So we'll continue to monitor the diseases across the state, or all the blood that we can gather and send off to the Department of Ag for figuring out exactly what's going on with our diseases across the state. So then the big question in all of this is really what are we actually doing with this process? Program cost. And again, coming back to the truncated time. And so, I'm sorry, this is July. So this pretty much we kicked in our hog program in July of 2011. So we've been active at this process for, 8 months or so now. And so everything we've spent, we're looking at about $22,000 spent in Region 1, almost 120 in Region 2, 212 in Region 3, 101 in Region 4. And then Nashville office, we've spent $30,000 out of the Nashville office for a statewide estimate, $485,000. And so that's 8 months worth of work and a lot of positive work. Whoops. The question that really comes down is, what does it cost per hog? And so under our methods exemption, under what we've done, everything that this program has done, the program for the first 8 months of its inception, since its inception, cost us just under $500,000. But the big picture is, for every $131 spent, we got a dead hog on the ground. That's a pretty effective program in my opinion at this point. The other question, and that's sort of a best case scenario, and we have to say the landowners did the lion's share of that. Under our program, the landowners did the lion's share of that. But when we look back, let's just ask the question of sort of worst case scenario, and that's January to now. Let's just say, what all did we spend January to now on our trapping efforts? Scratch out administration, and so what did it cost us to get hogs dead in Tennessee? In that time period, 16,000 in Region 1, 92 in Region 2, 134, 7 in Region 3, 75, 13. For a grand total, we spent just about $250,000 since January on our intensive hog management efforts. And we took out those 472 hogs. And so, but we're ending up, even at that point, worst case scenario, we're spending $700 for every hog dead in Tennessee. And so there is some sticker shock associated with that, and so, but you realize, USDA, they're killing hogs at a pretty similar rate, as far as the numbers that we're seeing nationally on what it takes for such a program. And then the other part of this whole process is thinking about management at this scale. And this goes back to that very first statement that I said when we're talking about redirection of agency resources to the level of deer and turkey restoration. And you start asking your question of, what happened, what does it mean to do a statewide program that involves in every inch of the state of Tennessee? And this is apples and oranges, but it's a great example, because in this case you had very few turkey in Tennessee, but a very massive problem to overcome. This is what Tennessee looked like in 1951. These were the counties that were open in 1951 when we started the modern era of turkey restoration. First decade, 1951 we started. We worked for 3 years before we've caught our first 2 turkeys. And so by the end of that decade, by the end of this decade, we caught a whole 119 turkeys. And so talk about, this is the scale that we're working on. And so we have no idea what it cost. We have no idea what the agency personnel was out there, but we know it was a magnificent effort that led us in this direction. The next question, the next step, once we got started, we have another decade, second decade, 270 turkeys, but look at the differences in our population. And so we creep along, we get better at it. You talk to our officers and they're getting better at what they're doing. They're improving their methods all the time. The technologies are improving. What happened in the 1970s was improved technology on rocket nets. They were using some archaic, trapping methods in the first couple of decades. Rocket nets came around, and then all of a sudden you see an explosion because the technology caught up to the management, and so as we move along in the 80s, just see what happened after the technology came along and we got good at this. 3,000 turkeys restored. You see what's going on. And from the hog perspective, we want to see, as we march through these decades, this population shrink instead of increase. But you see what it really means to have this level of restoration or removal from a statewide population effort. And so by the time we hit 2000 and declared the state that we had done everything we needed to do, it took us 5 decades to get there. It was also competing with deer, and so I'm not saying that we're going to be going this long, but this is what we're talking about. And so you have some sticker shocks associated with $701 in the worst case scenario, or $703 per hog, but We're going to get better at it. We know that was worst case scenario as far as the amount of money spent on the traps, the amount of money spent on our inefficiencies, all of those kinds of things we're going to be getting better at, and we'll see this program march through time and being very successful. You look at what we're doing here, and this is the hog distribution as we know it right now. Those little pockets, we know we can get rid of those little pockets with some effort. We know at $131 a hog that the landowners will help us get rid of those pockets across the state of Tennessee. Our map, our priority map is going to help us get there. Our management plan is going to help us get there. And we just need the time to get there. I think we're heading in the right direction. And so when you wrap all of this thing up, we know the path is long and difficult. We have some really good numbers in the first year. We've killed 3,700 hogs in the state of Tennessee in less than 1 year. And so, and we don't even know what the new exemption holders have done yet. You know, so we've got 800 and some odd people that are killing hogs right now that we won't know about until December of next year. So, but we believe we're on the right path. We know that those small pockets, Nebraska and Kansas have showed us that they can wipe out those small pockets with this type of a management approach that we're going after. So we believe we're heading down the right path. And I think overall, even though there is a slow process building up to this, I believe we're on a successful path. I think we've taken off. Golly, our regional guys have just done a fantastic job of fighting through all of the barriers that we've had to fight through, redoubling all of these efforts and reallocating their resources to get this program on the ground. And we've been really hardcore on the ground for 3 or 4 months. We've suspended now, and they're excited. I was talking with one of our officers, during the breaks, and they're chomping at the bit to get started as soon as the turkey season goes again. And so they had a new population show up in Wilson County. So we want to get after that new population in Wilson County. So we're on the right path, in my opinion. We've had great success in our first year, and we're looking forward to the whole process moving forward. And my pictures, the nice little black and white one, that is a wild hog that was released in southern Middle Tennessee, south central Middle Tennessee. Showed up. The farmer was actually able to, he was walking down the road and was actually able to shoo it into his pen. Called his local officer, and we eradicated that wild hog out of that county. So, but that's in many cases what we're dealing with, not some of the other ravenous animals that are out there. With that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Gray. Commission? Chairman Brown?
Gray, when you look at these initial costs, you said, of course, that included every aspect of it. And the equipment, that's something that we might buy additional equipment, but theoretically, I assume that's going to last a pretty long time.
Correct.
What we have, which is going to take the mean average down in the years to come.
Absolutely. And so we have spent a lot of money up front. What I presented in January, we had some pretty staggering figures on what we spent and some of that federal year-end money that we reallocated. And a lot of that will come down. I think we're seeing right now, I won't say we're saturated with traps and equipment now, but we're functional to this point that I think everybody is doing just fine. And we'll be picking up equipment as we can. But yes, I think most of our equipment, our base equipment right now is purchased, and that should last us a long time. We're talking about steel and those types of things. So we should have those traps for a while.
What about I had a senior moment here. Go ahead, somebody. I'll think of it in a minute. Yeah, thanks.
Commissioner Cannon?
Yeah, great report. Last year, I guess I made a mistake in that I said that, our measurement of success is dead hogs. And that's true. But there's another factor, and I hope you're able to get with the Department of Agriculture on, and that's the genesis of this. And that is the amount of damage that the hogs were doing to the agricultural community. And I think that that's going to be another number that's a positive number towards your efforts that I hope you're able to figure out within maybe what we have saved that could have been damaged over time. Because that many hogs has got to have a significant impact in reducing the agricultural damage.
Right.
So it's...
And we are working on that. The Department of Ag has reached out to UT Extension, and so Ben West, who gave a talk at the Kingsport meeting back middle of the last fall, he was the speaker at that meeting. He's reached out, he's part of UT Extension in West Tennessee, and Department of Ag has reached out to Ben West and also reached out to some of the Human Dimensions survey people, the Ag Econ people at University of Tennessee, and we are in process of putting together a group that will try to start answering those base questions of not the $1.5 billion that somebody else generated for the whole country, but what does it mean to have hogs in Tennessee? So that question is started.
Well, I
where it
guess
is
my
right now.
gut's telling me, and I do think I'm right on this, that when you take what we've invested, which is a big, you said it's sticker shock, but you compare that to the return of what the agricultural community is gaining back, it's a heck of an investment. The one thing that, a positive investment that we needed to be about. The one thing that I realize probably can't come up at this meeting, but in May, I think we had talked about trying to revisit the number of exemptions possibly based on acreage, and I'm assuming
We're
that
working on
might
that.
be something
Yeah,
at the May
Kirk
meeting.
has some good ideas that we're working on there, so we'll definitely be presenting. And that's separate from our proclamations. That is written into our field order manuals, and that how those exemptions are issued are handled through that. And so, and we're definitely working on that, but that'll be handled to a different avenue.
It's well done, thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Wright?
Do we have monies that can be appropriated yearly to this effort?
Most of what we presented here, and I should have made that clear, is personnel time. Is people being redirected off of one task onto another task, you know, and so I'd have to dig down pretty deep to give you exactly what are the tangible outlays that additional costs that we spent. Most of that is going to be the trapping that we spent, and those were those federal dollars that were reallocated. The rest of that is simply people being asked by the director and down the chain to redirect their efforts. If they're in hog country, they're doing hog trapping, they're doing technical support or technical assistance to the private landowners.
All right, one other question. I noticed that in the letter that we had from the U.S. Forest Service, they'd asked us to continue to have hunters as they incidentally took a hog to check them in. Are we going to do something like that? Do we keep track of what comes off of the management areas and stuff by hunters?
I'm not sure what we're going to do with that. Right now, the areas, there is, do any of you guys, are we collecting any of the data off on the Catoosa?
Sure, we're gonna run the check station every day of the hunt. Check the hog in and we'll take blood samples. Skinner Mountain.
And while he's getting up there, I think a lot of these areas, we don't do a check anyway, you know, like Skinner.
Right.
And the difficulty in checking these is going to be tough, but I'll let Kurt go ahead.
Yes, on the Catoosa wild hog control season, we will check every hog in. We'll have both check stations open and take blood samples, the whole 9 yards. And South Cherokee is the same. They check hogs in down there.
Okay, good deal. One other question.
Yes, sir.
Is there some of the private landowners on the plateau that can come back around and say we can see a difference in these hogs being removed?
I haven't heard directly yet. And so, but I'd have to also defer to the regions and the folks that are out there working with these landowners. And so what we did, you know, from the administrative side of things, you know, we dealt with the exemptions coming back. We got almost nothing but positive notes. We didn't ask for anything to be written on that. We got a lot of positive notes on that. So that's my direct contact with the landowner. If anybody else would like to have any information on other contacts with the landowners and successes, please speak up.
Chairman Brown?
I thought of it. I knew I would if I sat here long enough. But Eric pretty well covered it. This was not, I mean, the money that was used, you said was mostly man-hours that were
Correct.
redirected.
Correct.
And then other funds, I assume, within the agency were shifted around.
Right, right. We had some MVM, you know, just start riding the green, getting the green trucks there and that kind of stuff. But largely, this was manpower redirected. And so this was people being asked to do a different job than they normally do.
The other thing I was gonna ask, how do these results compare with, let's say, the last hunt that was on Catoosa, when there was I think 36 hogs killed over 3 days.
Right, right. And I don't know exactly what happened on how many the days killed per, with what's going on up there. The quick and dirty numbers that I ran for the, is our program right now is killing just under 7 hogs per day, and so when you look at the statewide, and so we are making a dent, and that's just slowly chipping away at it. And so the trapping is proven very successful. I think all of the regions that are doing it, all the numbers that I've seen, just as we expected, the traps go cold for a couple of weeks and then you get 20, and we're really working on not catching one out of the sounder. If there's a sounder of 20, we've got cameras set up. We're trying to catch all 20 of them. We don't want the 2 that go in there and educate the other 18. So our guys are working ferociously out there to make sure they get entire sounders out of there. So you'll see a lot of zeros on time spent, and then after 2 weeks you'll see 20 on their kill sheet. So they're doing a great job, and I would say most trap sites right now are easily averaging over one dead hog per trap night.
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, I do want to mention, he talks about being suspended, but we have private landowners that don't have an interest in turkey hunting, so I'm not sure how it's going in other regions, but Region 4, we have things going on today, because the landowner doesn't turkey hunt, so it's not a conflict. So it's still going on.
Yeah, good point. Very good point.
Any other comments from the commission? Audience? Patrick?
It looked like you was expecting me, Julie, I believe. I've got a few different questions. On the 7 per day, that's with the taking of the landowners, the ones they're taking too. Do you have a number of what the agency's taking per day?
No. I mean, I could work one up for you real
Yeah.
quick for what we've done over those, but
Yeah. Well, what I'd like to see happen is the agency to work more to involve the landowners and the hunters to be more involved, because they produced huge numbers.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, 70% of the hogs killed were landowners, probably?
more than that.
Or more than 80?
Yeah.
I mean, and a lot of landowners we talk to, they're a little skeptical about getting permits. Some of them's got a permit, they're not given all the number of hogs. There's actually, I'm sure been more killed than that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think if you can get to the landowners, the hunters, and them feel comfortable, feel more involved, I think you need to work more to get them involved in this program. And if they feel like it's more a control problem, that would help tremendously. But that's what I'm hearing with everybody talking to me throughout the thing. And I do know one thing we've had too is a lot of the counties around us that has a hog problem, or a farmer has a hog problem. Some of them like to be able to use dogs in those counties. That's something that we'd like for you to consider too. And when you're doing your numbers and your math and stuff, I seen that 131, and I was hoping you'd be my accountant for my taxes this time. But but anyway, but the other number was good. I mean, that's understand that. Is this so? The commission feels like they're going to proceed with the eradication through the future for some time. I mean, it's the guidance that you're looking at, I suppose. So, okay. But that would be one suggestion, if we try to get the landowners and the hunters more involved and make them, let them feel more involved in the program. I think it would be huge. I do think the lifting the number of 10 would be good in our area. It doesn't affect probably a lot of people. You said a 5-member on each permit, 4.9. But we do have areas up in our counties, huge landowners, and I think it could be some benefit in special circumstances, because that could be a big help. I'll probably think of something else when I sit down, but those some, and the testing too. I noticed on your brucellosis, are you giving tissue samples in with that brucellosis, or is it strictly blood? Blood. Are you going to provide tissue samples in the future for some hogs, or?
Well, I guess, is that right? Yes, we are in process right now of working with Department of Ag to start collecting those diseases collected in the reproductive tract. And we've been hesitating because getting deep into the animal is very different than collecting a vial of blood. We now have Department of Ag people that are trained in pulling reproductive tracts out of hogs. That I was talking, Roger slipped out. He had some other stuff this evening. He's our disease guy as well. And we have commitment today from the part, well, we had administrative commitment. Now we have on-the-ground personnel commitment. When we kill a hog, we know who to call to come pull reproductive tracts. Those reproductive tracts will be sent off for absolute validation of the disease, and we're also going to start pulling in some genetic work to find out where those hogs came from, if those hogs are local or if they like this one right here who came out of Florida or somewhere else. You know, we can start tracking where those diseases are coming from.
Yeah, the last one they checked for me, the guy's name, he said he come from Hawaii, so I don't know how that played into it, but it was the USDA guy, and he come and done that. But anyway, I understand, but that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Anyone else? All right. Thank you, Gray. We really
problem.
appreciate that.
Anytime.
Thank you, Chairman Brown. That concludes the business concerning the Wildlife Management Committee, and I think we'll take a 15-second break here and proceed after that.